Are you sure?
Here's the 30-second lesson on what legends know. Never ask a bride why she's getting married. Don't wear a skirt on a windy day. Deodorant is not a shower. Don't sniff chili flakes. And don't forget, saving is not investing. Legends don't just save, they invest in mutual funds. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
11 gallows rose up on the skyline of Tudor-era London at Newgate, St. Martin-le-Grand, Leadenhead and Bluntchapelton, put up by the thousands of soldiers who had been brought in to stamp out the rebellion against King Henry VIII. 15 leaders of the mob, perhaps 20, were tried for their crimes and then hung from the scaffold until near dead. Then their bowels were carefully removed through a small hole cut in their still breathing bodies and set on fire so the dying men could watch. Finally, mercy was delivered by the executioner's sword that severed their head and their limbs, which were parboiled before being put out on public display. For months before what came to be known as the Evil May Day riots, tensions had been building, with London's English residents, natives, complaining that foreigners were taking their jobs, stealing their businesses, and committing crimes with utter impunity. Foreign labourers, artisans, merchants, and even the King's French secretary were brutally attacked. Keir Starmer, the United Kingdom's Prime Minister, has vowed in the wake of recent violence that the leaders of white nationalist mobs that have attacked immigrants in recent days will be punished with, I quote, the full force of the law. Now, laws have obviously become somewhat gentler than they were in 1517, but even then, English courts have been handing down extraordinarily long sentences, not just for acts of violence, but even for hate speech. Famously, a person who held up a poster describing former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak as a coconut has been incarcerated. Like in 1517, England's rulers might be about to discover that state terror isn't enough to stamp out the primal power of xenophobia. Even small local ethnic issues flared into ethnic violence through much of English history. In the summer of 1919, historian Jacqueline Jenkinson records, a Chinese immigrant and his British wife were accused of renting a home in the Poplar area of London at inflated prices, because of which it was denied to a demobilized soldier just returned from the First World War. This small incident led to rioting and the home was attacked. The worst violence came from the white working class in the port cities of Glasgow, South Shields, Salford, London, Hull, Newport, Barry, Liverpool and Cardiff, which had become home to significant numbers of sailors from the UK's colonies as well as other foreign countries. The resentment wasn't just economic, Jenkinson writes. In some cases, the immigrant sailors sometimes dated or married local women, sparking off deep cultural neuroses about miscegenation. Local newspapers record some riots degenerating into free-range firefights with drunken sailors from various ships attacking each other. There was, historian Edgar Schuler reminds us, similar violence in the United States where black soldiers returning from the killing fields of Europe asserted their right to live lives of dignity as equal human beings. The white rioters, often backed by white police, used violence to make sure that the continued subjugation of blacks continued in the southern United States. Efforts to keep the peace, Bourne writes, spelled the rise of a new class of ethnic contractor who used their connections to the mosque, temple, or community center from where they exercised influence to keep the peace. Kenan Malik, the prominent philosopher, argues that this official multiculturalism sought to, and I quote, manage diversity by putting people into neat ethnic boxes, defining individual needs and rights by virtue of the boxes into which people are put, and using those boxes to shape public policy. It is a case not for open borders, he said of multiculturalism, but of the policing of borders, whether physical, cultural, or imaginative. Think of Britain, if you like, as a collection of little ghettos. The relationship between the empire and the colony had replicated itself in the US, but events would show no number of police could control these borders forever. Figures like Stephen Yaxley Lennon, who you might now have seen on television calling himself Tommy Robinson, emerged as the white equivalents of the ethnic contractors who had emerged from the ranks of England's minorities. The son, ironically, of an Irish migrant, Lennon cut his teeth brawling with Muslim street gangs in Luton and participating in football hooliganism. Even though his association with the white nationalist English Defence League proved quite short-lived, political scientist Robert May notes he adroitly rode the Europe-wide tide of anti-Muslim politics unleashed after 9/11. Like Lenin, a generation of young white people, hard hit by poor education, shrinking low-skill job opportunities, and the collapse of public sector housing, turned their rage against minorities who seemed to be taking away what the state owed native white English. Though groups like the EDL had negligible political heft, Britain never had an organized fascist movement unlike France or Europe, these ideas continued to resonate with the white underclass. The riots tearing apart England now show that this underclass is growing angrier, and that this deep anger is directed at a class and a nation that seems to have abandoned it. To address the problem, Keir Starmer's Labour Party will have to do much more than send hooligans and social media hate mongers to jail. It needs a program that will roll out prospects of hope and drive back the consequences of decades of underinvestment and undereducation. England has long needed an honest conversation on immigration and how its many cultures and peoples can engage and entwined. This has happened organically in many parts of the country. Think of England or the bigger cities. But in others, young Asians and blacks sometimes have only passing contact with white England. It's possible in many cities to go through school and even college without having close friends from another racial group. Instead of grudging tolerance, the country needs to move towards genuine pluralism. Fascism's progress in Europe and the United States means the UK's handling of the violence it now faces will be watched carefully across the world. Can the UK find a way of addressing grievance and preventing movement towards fascism at the very outset? I'm Praveen Swami, and I'm a contributing editor to ThePrint. Thank you for watching this episode of Security Code.